fewer than 1,300 Hadzabe remain in the world. They live as their ancestors did 40,000 years ago.
No crops, no livestock, no money.
Everything we eat, we hunt or gather on this very day.
But when they take down a giraffe, time stops.
The daily urgency vanishes.
For 4 weeks, a single kill feeds the whole community. A 20-foot animal, the difference between hunger and plenty.
If you are passionate about wild animals and real documentaries, do not leave this video. Watch until the end, subscribe now to the channel, and comment where you are watching from. In northern Tanzania, where the savannah meets the Rift Valley, there exists a lake called Eyasi. Its brackish waters expand and shrink according to the seasons, creating a landscape that seems to have been forgotten by time. Millennial baobabs rise like silent sentinels. Thorny acacias draw shadows upon the red earth. And among these ancestral trees hidden from roads and the modern world live the Hadzabe. Consider their situation. While you read these words on an electronic device connected to a global information network, there exists a group of human beings who wake up every morning without knowing exactly what they will eat. Not because they are poor in the sense we understand poverty, but because they chose, or rather never abandoned, a way of life that humanity practiced for 200,000 years before inventing agriculture. The Hadzabe do not plant, they do not raise livestock, they do not store food. Each day is a renewed search for sustenance, and yet, in the oral history of this tribe, there is no record of collective famine, no memory of catastrophic scarcity. While entire civilizations collapsed due to mismanagement of resources, the Hadzabe prospered for 40 millennia in the same territory without exhausting it. Their territory lies 50 kilometers from Olduvai Gorge, frequently called the cradle of humanity by paleontologists. There, fossils of our oldest ancestors were found. Homo habilis walked these lands nearly 2 million years ago. Observe the proximity. The Hadzabe live literally next to the place where humanity took its first steps, and they continue walking in the same way. Genetically, they are unique. They possess no known close relatives among other African peoples. Their language, Hadzane, is a linguistic isolate. It relates to no other language on the planet. The clicking sounds they produce when speaking resemble the San peoples of the Kalahari, but DNA analyses confirmed. There is no genetic connection between the two groups. The Hadzabe are a lineage apart, one of the oldest of the human species still alive. Think about what this means. When your ancestors crossed out of Africa 70,000 years ago, some humans stayed behind. The Hadzabe descend from those who remained, while other groups spread across the world, developed agriculture, built cities, and eventually created industrial civilization. The Hadzabe continued doing exactly what they did before. Hunting, gathering, moving, sharing. They live in camps of 20 to 30 people. There is no hierarchy. There is no chief. There is no private property in the sense we know. Decisions are made collectively by consensus. If someone disagrees with the group, they simply move to another camp. Conflicts are resolved by distance, not by confrontation. It is a democracy so radical that it dispenses even with the concept of formal leadership. The camps change place every 2 or 3 months, sometimes more frequently. The mobility is strategic. When the resources of an area begin to diminish, the group moves before exhausting them completely. The land has time to recover. The animals return. The plants sprout again. The Hadzabe return later, finding renewed abundance. It is a system of sustainability that has worked for 400 centuries. But there is an exception to this life of constant movement. When a hunter brings down a giraffe, an adult giraffe weighs between 800 and 1,200 kilograms. A large male can reach 1.5 tons. This represents a quantity of meat that no Hadzabe camp could carry back. So the reverse happens. The entire camp moves close to the carcass. Grasp the scale of this. 30 people abandon their temporary huts, gather their few belongings, bows, arrows, stone knives, gourds for water, and walk kilometers through the savannah to the location where the giraffe fell. There they set up a new camp and remain until consuming every usable gram of the animal, a whole month, sometimes more. During this period, the daily urgency of the search for food disappears. The women still go out to gather tubers and baobab fruits because the diet needs variety. But the constant pressure of the hunt vanishes temporarily. The men can rest, craft new arrows, tell stories around the fire. The children play with more freedom. The elders recover strength. A single giraffe completely transforms the social dynamic of the group for weeks. But before all this happens, someone needs to land an arrow in an animal 6 meters tall that can run at 50 kilometers per hour. Hadzabe bows measure nearly 2 meters in length. They are made of flexible wood harvested from specific trees. The hunters know each species by name, know which gives the best. Elasticity, which resists humidity best, which produces the quietest sound when firing. The string was traditionally made of animal tendons, twisted and treated until becoming resistant like synthetic threads. Today, some Hadzabe use nylon strings obtained by trade with neighboring tribes, but the principle remains the same. The arrows are divided into 3 distinct types. For birds and small mammals, they use simple wooden tips. For medium-sized antelopes and dangerous animals at close range, tips of metal forged by the Datoga, a neighboring tribe of blacksmiths. For large prey like zebras, buffaloes, and giraffes, they use arrows with poison. Observe the refinement of the system. Each type of prey demands a specific tool. There is no improvisation. Millennia of trial and error produced this specialized arsenal. The poison is extracted from 2 different plants. The most common is the desert rose, Adenium obesum, which grows in specific areas of Hadzabe territory, including an island on the southeast bank of Lake Ayasi. The hunters travel regularly to this location to collect the raw material. They boil the sap until obtaining a black and sticky residue, which is then applied just below the arrow tip. The second source is Strophanthus eminei, a plant with even more potent cardiotoxic properties. Both contain cardiac glycosides, chemical substances that interfere with heart function. When they enter an animal's bloodstream, they provoke arrhythmias, muscle weakness, and eventually cardiac arrest. But the poison does not act instantly, and here lies the true challenge of the hunt. A poisoned arrow hitting an impala, a medium-sized antelope, takes approximately 30 minutes to kill. The animal flees, the hunter follows, tracking footprints, drops of blood, broken branches. Half an hour later, he finds the prey fallen. A giraffe takes 6 hours to die. 6 hours of pursuit under the African sun. 6 hours, following a wounded animal that can still cover enormous distances. 6 hours of absolute attention to signs left on the landscape. The hunter cannot lose the trail. If he loses it, he wastes the arrow, loses the prey, and puts at risk the feeding of 70 people for a month. The Hadzabe hunt mainly at dawn and at dusk, when animals are more active and the heat is less brutal. They use 2 main techniques, ambush and pursuit. In the ambush, the hunter waits hidden near water sources or known trails. In the pursuit, he locates a prey, approaches silently, and fires when within effective range of the bow. Scientific studies measured the mechanics of Hadzabe bows. The average draw weight is 311 newtons, equivalent to about 70% of the body weight of an adult man. The arrows reach speeds of 45 meters per second. The kinetic energy at impact reaches 37 joules. These are numbers comparable to modern competition bows, but numbers do not capture the real skill. A Hadzabe hunter learns to make his own bow around 3 years of age. He starts with miniature versions, playing at hitting fixed targets. Gradually, he progresses to moving targets. At 7 or 8 years old, he already accompanies adults on real hunts, observing, learning, memorizing. At 12, he makes his first serious attempts. At 20, If he has succeeded in bringing down a large animal, he becomes an ipem, a complete man in the Hadzabe social system. The title of ipeme is not merely symbolic, it carries concrete privileges. Only ipeme men can consume certain parts of large prey: kidneys, lungs, heart, neck, tongue, and genitals. These portions are considered sacred, consumed in exclusive rituals performed outside the main camp, where no woman or child may be present. If a man reaches 30 years without having brought down a large animal, he receives ipim status automatically, by age. But everyone knows it is not the same thing. True honor comes from the successful hunt. Now imagine what it means to bring down a giraffe. Giraffes are the tallest land mammals on the planet. An adult male can measure 5 meters and 80 centimeters in height. The neck alone weighs about 270 kilograms. The heart is 60 centimeters long and weighs 11 kilograms. It needs to be that size to pump blood to the brain, located 2 meters above the rest of the body. The legs are 1 meter and 80 long. A single kick can kill a lion. Approaching such an animal without being detected requires extraordinary skill. The giraffe has wide peripheral vision, positioned atop that natural observation tower. Its eyes detect movement at enormous distances. The slightest error, a broken twig, a silhouette against the horizon, a scent carried by the wind, and it flees before the hunter gets within bow range. Reports from researchers who accompanied Hadzabe hunts describe men taking off their sandals to avoid any noise, walking hunched over for hundreds of meters, using vegetation as cover, communicating only by glances and subtle gestures. The silence is so absolute that it seems impossible for human beings. And yet, most hunts fail. Scientific data show that in 256 days of observation, involving more than 2,000 hunter days, the Hadzabe brought down 71 large animals. This means a success rate of approximately 3% per day of hunting. In the vast majority of times, hunters return empty-handed. But when they get a giraffe, everything changes. The hunter who hits the giraffe is not the owner of the meat. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive characteristic of Hadzabe society for those who grew up in cultures of private property. The man who spent hours tracking, who fired the fatal arrow, who ran mortal risks, this man does not control the distribution of the prey. The carcass belongs to the entire group. Think of the contrast with our world. If you work, you receive a salary that is yours. If you produce something, you have a right to the profits. Individual effort generates individual reward. It is the foundation of the economic system in which we live. The Hadzabe operate on a completely different logic. The success of one benefits all. The failure of one is absorbed by all. There is no individual accumulation of wealth, because there is no concept of individual wealth. There is only the group surviving together. When the giraffe falls, the news spreads quickly. Messengers run to other camps in the vicinity. Entire families begin to move toward the hunt site. What was a group of 30 people can grow to 50, 60, 70 individuals in a matter of days. The distribution of the meat follows precise rules, transmitted orally for generations. First, the organs. Liver, heart, kidneys, and lungs are consumed immediately, still at the kill site. They are the most perishable parts and also the most nutritious, dense in iron, vitamins, and fat. The Apim men gather in a circle away from the main camp, roast the organs over coals, and eat in ritualistic silence. No woman or child participates in this meal. Then the carcass is dismembered. The legs, the neck, the ribs, the hindquarters. Each portion is separated and assigned to different families of the camp. There is no negotiation. There is no dispute. Tradition determines who receives what, based on criteria of kinship, necessity, and presence at the moment of distribution. The hunter who brought down the animal receives the skin as symbolic recognition. It is his only material distinction. But even the skin will eventually be transformed into something useful for the group. Clothes, bags, ropes. Nothing is wasted. The bones are broken to extract marrow, a concentrated source of fat and calories. In the weeks of consuming the giraffe, women and children spend hours cracking bones with stones, using sticks to remove the white and creamy marrow from the interior. The marrow is mixed with baobab fruits, forming an energetic paste that the Hadzabe consider a delicacy. The tendons are removed, dried and stored to make bowstrings. A single set of giraffe tendons can produce enough material for several bows. The subcutaneous fat is carefully separated and kept in gourds. It will serve for cooking, for treating wounds, for protecting the skin from the inclement sun. Even the stomach content, partially digested, mixed with gastric juices, is examined in search of medicinal plants that the giraffe might have consumed. The Hadzabe know hundreds of plant species and their properties. A giraffe is essentially a walking processor of African plants. In agricultural societies, storing food is synonymous with security. Full barns mean tranquility. The Hadzabe inverted this logic. Sharing food immediately is their form of security. When you give meat today, you know you will receive meat tomorrow, when another hunter succeeds and you have failed. Anthropologists call this storing meat in the bellies of neighbors. The entire community functions as a collective insurance against the unpredictability of the hunt. But there is something deeper happening. Sharing is not just economic strategy. It is the very fabric of Hadzabe society. Refusing to share is the supreme sin. Someone who hides food or tries to accumulate more than they need faces severe social consequences. Not physical punishments, but isolation, contempt, loss of status. In a society where survival depends on cooperation, being marked as selfish equates to a sentence of exclusion. Hadzabe children learn to share from the moment they can hold a piece of food. Researchers documented childhood meals where children of 5, 6, 7 years shared fruits and tubers spontaneously with siblings, cousins, and even non-relatives. No one forced them. The behavior was so internalized that it seemed instinctive. In fact, comparative studies show that Hadzabe children share more generously than children of industrialized societies in the same age group. The cultural environment shaped predispositions that we, in other cultures, need to teach artificially through rules and punishments. Hadzabe men spend on average 2,400 calories per day during hunting expeditions, nearly 90% of their estimated daily energy expenditure. Paradoxically, research from Duke University discovered that the Hadzabe have a total caloric expenditure similar to that of sedentary people in industrialized countries. The human body apparently adapted to maintain a relatively fixed energy budget, regardless of the level of physical activity. This means that the dietary efficiency of the Hadzabe is extraordinary. They obtain adequate nutrition with fewer resources than technological societies. They do not suffer from obesity, diabetes, or cardiovascular diseases at the rates that afflict the modern world. Their varied diet, meat, honey, baobab fruits, tubers, roots, provides a complete spectrum of nutrients without need for supplements or industrial processing. Honey, especially, occupies a prominent place in the diet. The Hadzabe developed a symbiotic relationship with a bird called the honey guide. The bird locates hives in tall trees, flies to the human hunters, and guides them with specific songs to the location. The men climb the tree, use smoke to ward off the bees, and extract the comb. In exchange, they leave pieces of wax for the bird to consume. This partnership between species has existed for centuries, possibly millennia. The bird cannot access the honey alone. It needs a mammal to open the hive. The humans save hours of random searching. Both benefit. It is interspecific cooperation in its most elegant form. During the wet season, when rains transform the savanna into a sea of green vegetation, the animals disperse. Hunting becomes more difficult. The Hadzabe then increase consumption of plants, fruits, berries, starch-rich tubers that women dig up with pointed sticks. Honey also becomes more abundant when flowers bloom. In the dry season from May to October, animals concentrate at the few remaining water points. It is the best time for hunting. Zebras, warthogs, antelopes all need to drink. Hunters set up ambushes, sometimes waiting motionless for hours until a prey approaches close enough. This seasonal rhythm determines not only the diet, but the entire social organization. Dry season camps tend to be larger, taking advantage of the abundance of meat. Wet season camps fragment into smaller groups, reducing competition for more dispersed plant resources. But Giraffe is an exception. Giraffe is plenty in any season. The quantity of protein and fat contained in a single carcass is sufficient to sustain a camp for 4 weeks or more. During this period, daily pressure decreases drastically. Hunters do not need to go out daily in search of fresh meat. Women gather plants more for variety than for urgent necessity. The pace of life slows down. It is in these moments of abundance that Hadzabe culture flourishes most visibly. Nights are dedicated to songs and dances. The Ipim ritual, performed on moonless nights in almost total darkness, gathers adult men for celebrations that mix movement, sound, and spiritual communion. The details remain secret, revealed only to initiates, but researchers who witnessed from afar describe hours of rhythmic chanting and hand clapping. Oral stories are transmitted around the fire. The Hadzabe possess no writing. All their history, all their wisdom, all their knowledge about plants, animals, territory, and survival techniques exists only in the collective memory, passed from generation to generation through narratives. Some of these stories speak of the origin of the world. Hadzabe cosmology includes the sun, the moon, the stars, and the ancestors. A creation legend describes the first Hadzabe descending to Earth, whether from a giant baobab or down the neck of a giraffe. The giraffe in this worldview is more than food. It is a connection to the sacred, a bridge between sky and earth. There are no religious leaders. There are no shamans or healers with special powers. The Hadzabe do not practice witchcraft, although they believe other tribes can curse them. Their spirituality is diffuse, immanent, present in every element of the landscape that has sustained them for 40,000 years. Today, this landscape is shrinking. In the last half-century, the Hadzabe lost 90% of their traditional territory. Datoga herders expanded cattle herds into areas previously used by hunter-gatherers. Isanzu farmers and other Bantu groups cleared forests to plant. Private farms fenced off water sources. Where once the Hadzabe could hunt zebras, buffaloes, and giraffes freely, they now face government restrictions. Parts of their territory were transformed into game reserves, open to rich tourists, closed to the original inhabitants. The irony is brutal. The only humans who lived in harmony with this land for millennia are now forbidden from using it. Large animals that sustained the traditional diet have become rare. The Hadzabe today hunt mainly dik-diks, small antelopes the size of hares, warthogs, monkeys, and birds. Protein comes in smaller portions, demanding constant daily effort. Many can no longer sustain themselves solely on hunting and gathering. Ugali, a cornflower porridge, a staple food of modern Tanzania, began to appear in camps, obtained by trade or bought with money earned in temporary jobs or tourism. Yes, tourism. After appearing in BBC and PBS documentaries in the early 2000s, some Hadzabe groups became tourist attractions. Visitors pay to accompany traditional hunts that, according to critics, are frequently staged. Animals placed strategically, arrows fired for cameras, not for survival. Other Hadzabe resist. Approximately 300 people still live in a completely traditional way, refusing interaction with the modern world. They are increasingly pressured into ever smaller territories. In 2011, a Hadzabe community of 700 people received formal titles over 20,000 hectares of land, the first time the Tanzanian government officially recognized the territorial rights of an ethnic minority. It was a historic victory, but partial. Other communities still await the same recognition. Meanwhile, the Hadzabe continue doing what they always did, hunting when possible, gathering when necessary, moving when the land needs to rest, sharing everything with everyone. And occasionally, very occasionally, a hunter hits a giraffe. When the last rib is gnawed and the bones are returned to the earth, the Hadzabe do not celebrate a victory. They give thanks. They thank the giraffe for feeding their children. They thank the poison of the trees that made the arrow possible. They thank the ancestors who taught every technique, every movement, every silence, 40,000 years of knowledge passed from generation to generation without a single written word. All oral, all practical, all alive. While the modern world wastes tons of food per day, the Hadzabe use every gram of a prey, meat, organs, marrow, skin, tendons. Nothing is left. Over. Nothing is lost. Perhaps the greatest lesson this tribe offers is not about hunting. It is about sufficiency, about knowing that a giraffe is enough, that the land provides when you respect its limits, that true wealth is not in accumulating, but in sharing. The Hadzabe live as if every meal were a miracle, because for them, that is exactly what it is. The last hunter-gatherers of East Africa are not relics of a primitive past. They are teachers of a present we have not yet learned to see. Each arrow fired carries 40 millennia of wisdom. Each shared meal demonstrates that humanity survived not by competition, but by cooperation. And each slaughtered giraffe is a class that the modern world has not yet learned to attend. They remain there, among the baobabs and acacias, under the same sun that warmed their ancestors since before the last ice age, hunting, gathering, sharing, waiting for the next arrow to find its destination, waiting for the next giraffe to feed 70 mouths for a whole month, waiting for the world around them to realize finally that perhaps it is they and not us who discovered how to live in peace with the earth. The sun sets over Lake Ayasi. The savannah quiets down. Somewhere among the elongated shadows, a Hadzabe hunter puts away his arrows and returns to camp. Tomorrow the search begins again.